Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics, brought to you by Sketch.com. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is the writer of comics like the upcoming Bog Bodies and the artist of titles like the upcoming The Punisher vs. Barracuda. It's Declan Shalvey. Thanks for coming on.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Dave.
So, I want to start with the fact you're a little under the weather. How you doing? How you feeling?
I'm fine. I think I'm starting to feel a bit better. I was working on Monday and everything was fine, and I just started feeling a bit crappy at the end of the day and thought, for once, I thought I'd be responsible. Like, you know what, go to bed, get some rest.
Yes.
Yeah, rest and get up early the following day. And I just felt even worse the next day. So, yeah, I've just been lying. I've got some kind of flu that I must have caught at the weekend. Because I actually went outside of the house to have fun, and I got sick as a result. That'll learn me.
Yeah, that's your body telling you no.
Yeah, it's like, no, you should just always work, never take some time off. But yeah, no, normally if I just like, what I have to do is just stay in bed, rest for, drink, fluid, to have lots of fluids and stuff. And like in 3 days, I'm normally fine, but it's just this one's kicking my ass for some reason.
Yeah. I don't. The reason I want to start with this though is because I always think, I don't think people really realize like with the world of crushing deadlines from comics and stuff like that. Not that you're necessarily facing that right now, but it's if you're sick and you're literally like recommended by your doctor to stay in bed, it's pretty hard to draw while you're laying in bed. Maybe you can. Maybe some people can. You can just have like an art board and just tilt it up and you just draw in bed or something like that. But how does being sick like affect your work in a normal state? Like, is this something that can really hamstring you?
Oh well, for sure. I've just not worked for an entire week. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't. I went to the doctor the weekend and she gave me some antibiotics and because I was thinking, oh yeah, that'll sort me out. And she said like she just said you just might need to spend more days in bed, and she goes, it might take up to another week. And I'm like, I wouldn't take 2 weeks off by choice.
Right.
I wouldn't take a 2-week holiday. I'd need to work. Like, I can't take more than a week off, without something driving me crazy. I need to draw something or work on something. So, it's completely not, it's crazy to me that I have not been making something for the last week. But it happens. I'm lucky where I am in my career now that like, anything that I'm due, I think I had a cover due on Friday, but I gave the editor a heads up because I think by Wednesday I could see where it was going. Mm-hmm. So I emailed her to see if I could get it on Monday instead. So I'm going to try do it tonight, draw it tonight and color it tomorrow. I just have to do that.
Yeah.
I can't really sit around any more than that. But I've nothing else due. I think I've another cover due later next week. But I think by the end of next week, I'd say I have that penciled, so I just need to ink it. And somebody else is coloring it, so that's fine. But like the main book I'm drawing, though, that's just but like the main job I have of inking say Punisher is like that's time. That's a lot of time lost. That's going to hurt me.
Yeah. The interesting thing about what you're saying, though, is do you find, I mean, obviously the situation can change this significantly, but do you find that sometimes that the stress from like losing time to sickness is more because, I don't know, like you just feel boxed in and you feel a little crazy because you can't draw because you're being forced away from your job less than like the deadlines? Or does it, I'm guessing it just really depends on the situation.
Yeah, I guess it depends. I will say like the one good thing about like this happening is it does force me to take a step back because I have an awful habit of just diving too much, and I suffer from tunnel vision, that like I'm just being determined to get one thing done, staying up too late to get it done or ignoring other stuff. Like I need to get one thing done before I move on to the next. Multitasking is not my skill at all. So, but something like this is actually good sometimes because it forces you to stop and just catch a breath. Maybe it's my body telling me to just stop for a bit. Who knows? But at the same time, there's there's some things I can do from like some email, but even at that, I don't. If someone asks me a question in an email, just when you're feeling like crap, it's physically I could probably type the email, but I don't even know what to say. I like what you would think is I could do lots of writing, because I'm not at the drawing board, but my brain, your brain is just like no. So I guess I try embrace the regeneration time, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, look, there's feck all I can do about it anyway, so I might as well lean into it,
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you got to watch Picard, which is a nice change of pace.
Yes.
I have not watched it yet. I'm looking forward to it. But you mentioned looking back, and I want to start with that because there's two things that happened this year. There's from what I understand, it was your Dec-ade at Marvel, and there was an art book celebrating that called Marvel Monograph: The Art of Declan Shalvey. And, I know that was a big deal to you. Like the people that also had books released, like your Arthur Adams and, varying other like Marvel legends, you were one of those people. But I wanted to take that time, or take a little time to like look back on your time, not just at Marvel, but like your career so far, because I feel like looking at a book like that must be a very interesting experience for you because you can see kind of how you've grown and everything. For you, like, now that you kind of were forced to look back through that project, what were like the big moments for you in figuring out what you wanted to do, how you wanted to do it in terms of doors being opened, either at Marvel or even beyond?
Right. Well, there's a whole lot there. Well, it'll actually be 10 years in June. I think that's when I signed the contract.
Okay.
I because it is this year. It's 2020 is the 10th year.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean that worked out nicely too. Like I was talking to Merle beforehand, because we could have done it earlier, but it's nice that it's on the same year. But I don't know. Well, the nice thing about how John Rhett Thomas kind of put the book together was it's in kind of segments of characters.
Sure.
And I did runs on those different characters, so you kind of like I look back at the Thunderbolt stuff with like a lot of affection. Mm-hmm. I really loved what Jeff Parker, like those scripts were great, and I just kind of wish there were more comics like that.
Yeah, that was a great run.
Just with such great. Yeah, and Jeff was such a great collaborator too, and he seemed to have a better idea of what I could do than I did, and he helped me play to my strengths before I realized what they were, and I mean I worked my bollocks off on the book, and it was really tough because like I was following Kev Parker all the time, which was a big that was a hit to my ego every time because you do these pages you're happy with or these issues you're happy with, and then comes Kev Walker and just like kicks your ass every time. But and that was a double shipping book, right? That was when I think Thunderbolts seemed to be the test case for that. Mm-hmm. So I remember that being just a lot of work, so much so that you kind of couldn't really be thinking about it much, and then. And I remember where I was in my life, and then with Venom, and then with Deadpool. So it's, I think there was definitely a big shift between Venom and Deadpool,
right?
Because I was offered Deadpool and turned it down. I might have told you this story before. I can't remember, but because I liked doing Venom, and they offered Deadpool, and I said no, and because and I think I made a demand. I said I can only do it if I get this colorist and I do my own covers and whatever. Like, and they were like, okay, we'll see what we can do. And then they informed me that Venom was cancelled.
They forced your hand.
But like I never would have had the balls to do that if I had known. I would have. But I think that was a push that I needed because I spent a lot of time at Marvel basically saying yes, sir, mm-hmm. to whatever was asked of me. I kind of ended up on a lot of quick fill-in bits here and there that I knew I didn't want to do, but I did because the editor was stuck, and I wanted to be a good freelancer.
Hmm.
And I kind of look at them now and I'm like, well, it's not my best stuff, and I did them really fast, and wasn't, was it worth doing those late nights to, to help out the editor? I don't know. Helped him at the time, but you kind of look back and I guess, like I'm not old or anything, but you realize you only have so many pages in you. And I think there's a difference between when I kind of knew what I was worth and when I didn't know what I was worth.
Sure.
And then I guess Moon Knight is, I don't know. Sorry, I don't really feel like I'm answering your question.
No,
Sorry.
you totally are. No, I mean, honestly, it's like when I look back on it, the funny thing is I can like think very specifically. This is like weird that I can think specifically about your career and like the moments where I was like, oh, okay. Like the first thing, like, I mean, I first read your stuff, 28 days later. Like that was when I first read it. I was like, who the hell is this Declan Shalvey guy?
Weirdly, we came up at the same time,
Yeah.
me as being an artist, and you like as a critic and journalist, like because it's funny.
Yeah.
Because we first talked when I was on Thunderbolts, I remember.
Yeah, we did an artist, I think it was Artist August, when I was doing those like entire months of interviews for Multiversity. Yeah. But yeah, so then Thunderbolts was a big one, and then The Good, the Bad, the Ugly on Deadpool, which honestly is like one of my favorite arcs for Deadpool ever. I think it's like an incredible one. And then jumping into Moon Knight. But the thing that I think is really interesting about all of your projects you've kind of taken on is, even if you never, like, especially if you're Marvel stuff, you rarely had a chance to be that launch artist or not even launch artist, like somebody who had a sustained run on them. But I feel like somehow you always ended up on arcs that were super impactful. Like, Moon Knight was one you started on. You were the de facto launch artist. But it's like, if you ask any Moon Knight fan what their modern Moon Knight comic it is they 100% of the time point to that comic.
Yeah, I've really looked out with that one. It's Look, really. Like I only did one arc of Deadpool, and that's the one everybody talks about.
Yeah.
That's Look. That's sheer Look. Moon Knight, like the thing I hear most from people about Moon Knight now is it's the comic that got them back into comics.
Wow.
Which is amazing for me, because I remember for me it was Planetary and Ultimates. Because I hadn't read comics in a while when I was in college, and then I was started trying to find them, and I found, like, those were the comics I found. I was like, holy crap!
Yeah,
what
different.
Happened to comics? Yeah, we're very, like, it would have been, Scott Lobel, Ed McGuinness, X-Men stuff would have been the last stuff I would have really seen. Or no, I think Onslaught.
Oh yeah.
I can't even remember. But it just felt like everything had changed. So to hear that about Moon Knight means so much. Or it's that it's their first comic. Mm-hmm. They didn't really read comics, and when they read that, they wanted to read more. That's the best thing you can really be told about a book that you worked on.
Yeah.
But it was Warren that's why, like, But I will say, for me, I was definitely getting frustrated not getting, like, coming onto a book that already exists, and say with the thing with Kev, I was following Kev's lead there. With Venom, I was following other artists and whatnot. Moon Knight, I'd been waiting. I'd been at Marvel. Was it? Yeah, like 4 years at that stage, and I'd seen other people start at Marvel with new books, and I think the Catholic schoolboy in me was like, oh, just be a good boy and you'll get rewarded, but like that doesn't really happen, generally. And I was getting more and more frustrated, but then it actually did happen with Moon Knight, because that's not something I was aware of. It was Wacker offered it to me. But I didn't even know if Wacker liked my stuff. Mm-hmm. He was my editor on Venom, but he was the head editor of the Spider-Man office, so I didn't really have too much interaction with him.
Right.
So these things, you never know, like, what people are saying about. It's one thing when you having been around a while and you might know some editors and stuff, and you hear conversations, and as a freelance artist, like, no matter how good you are, you've no idea what, like, it's a subjective thing. So there might be somebody that just thinks you suck. Mm-hmm. I heard that like there was some resistance to me going on Deadpool at the time, and that went out. That ended up going out, turned out great. I think there was something else that I heard that somebody didn't want me on.
Interesting.
That I ended up doing a good job on. Yeah, but like you never. I mean, I'm not saying that as a gripe or anything. It's just there's so much machinations behind the scenes. You never know. And that's the thing that sucks about being an artist is you never ever hear those conversations. Writers hear those conversations all the time. Writers or artists don't. So I think that's the one thing that's frustrating is you're rarely asked what you want to do. It's like, do you want this job?
Right.
And the answer, if you don't want it, then the answer is you don't have a job.
Yeah, I hate to laugh about that because it's terrible, but at the same time, it's like.
But I mean, so it works. But I mean, I've been very lucky that the books I've done I have enjoyed.
Right.
Some guys work on books that they might hate. I don't know, but I liked Venom when I was working on it. I really liked Thunderbolts. Deadpool was a surprise. I didn't think I was going to like it, but I really did.
Yeah.
And Moon Knight, I still don't know what the hell was going on.
Well, before we started recording, we were talking about. I was talking about how one of the reasons why I thought Jonathan Hickman and Lee Neil Yu and R.B. Silva's X-Men book is connecting with people so much is it was all one and done stories, and that was the thing about Moon Knight too. Is Moon Knight was a very similar book in that regard, and I think that's part of the reason why it was both so welcoming to new readers, but also such a lasting memory for people. It felt different, and it was. I think the way that you all put that together, it really, I don't know, it stands out because it was in fact different.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, look, I mean, I followed Warren's lead in that, but I remember thinking, like, there's definitely decisions in that book that are mine, and my thinking was, if I can't take some fucking chances on a Warren Ellis book, when will I?
Right.
And in a lot of ways, I've been not saying playing it safe, but just doing my job on previous books. Moon Knight was the distilled, just lots of ideas I'd been having for ages that were just kind of stored into a box, and that box was just brimming at that point. And then when Moon Knight happened, I just had a place to just cut loose in a way in which Warren's writing, I feel, gave me the space to do that. That's a huge element of it. But the book required more from me, and I was brimming. I was just revving for the opportunity to do it. So it was
the perfect storm.
Everything worked out just in the right way, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like issue number 5, like the raid issue, is like a perfect example because that was entirely silent. Was it entirely silent or
no?
No. It's very action.
I would say there's. Oh, definitely, it's very minimal on dialogue, but I think there's even a narration going through that one.
It has been a bit.
Can't
since
remember
I read that,
actually.
I'm not gonna lie, but at the same time,
actually, you know what? I just happen to have it here in front of me.
But I mean, it's like that was a great issue for you to stand out and kind of make it your own because it was so defined by what was happening in the physical space, in the art.
It's funny because, like, just flicking through this now, the previous issue where
very injection-y.
where he goes into the dream space, that one nearly killed me. It was just so much like drawing.
Yeah.
But like, not that like, nobody likes that issue, but it's issue 5, which was like the work was really in just working out the compositions, and it was in the layout really. The rest was just really drawing. But I loved it. I remember working on it. It just clicked. Everything just. Well, I mean, Warren wrote it, and again, like I can't. I'm not going to say Warren just said do your thing. He didn't. He wrote a script. Like it's
right.
It's not like it was Marvel style or anything. But whatever way it worked just worked in perfect tempo with how I wanted to do those scenes. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's funny. Even in the art book, I remember the writer wanted to work. He wanted to concentrate on a different issue, and I had to write back to him. I was like, "Look, man, every single person who's ever talked to me about Moon Knight has mentioned issue 5. If we're going to like look at any issue, it would be a spit in the face if we didn't look at that one.
Yeah.
Even though it's technically, I would say, the least visual
Sure.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like it's less spectacular. We'll put it that way. It's not. It doesn't have ghosts. It doesn't have mushroom gods.
Right.
It's more technical. But there's I was watching this martial arts movie there because I'm sick in bed, and there's something very satisfying about watching a technical exercise just being just working so well.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, a quick word from our sponsor. I want to take a quick second to give a shout out to my friends at TKO Studios. TKO is a new comics publisher doing things a little differently, with each of their titles being binge released in trade paperback and 6-issue collector's box sets at the same time. Their second wave of comics dropped recently, including one of my comics of the year in Jeff Lemire and Gabriel Hernandez Walt's Sentient, Roxane Gay and Ming Doyle's The Banks, and more, as well as gems from their first wave, like Garth Ennis and Steve Epting's remarkable war story, Sarah. Each is available now at tkopresents.com in trade, single-issue box sets, and digital release. Want to check these comics out before you order? Well, I have great news for you. If you visit tkopresents.com, you can read the first issues of each title for free right now. If you like what you read and you're a retailer, reach out directly to them at sales@tkopresents.com or go to tkopresents.com/vendors to order. TKO offers a 50% order discount as well as free shipping in the United States, a deal that's pretty hard to beat. Just a reader? That's cool too. You can order whichever comics you like directly off their site as well. Visit tkopresents.com to learn more today. And now, back to the show. Well, let's talk about today's stuff. And actually by today's stuff, I mean slightly tomorrow's stuff, because you have The Punisher versus Barracuda coming up. It's you with Ed Brisson and colorist Matt Lopez. And, the funny thing about, like, we've talked a little bit, off this, about the title of the book. It very much is what it says it is. It is The Punisher versus Barracuda. But and that's a big deal, because the Barracuda has never been in the proper Marvel universe. He's like a Punisher Max character. I think he was in Fury Max too. I think that Garth Ennis and Goran Parlov book. But it's also in Miami, a very atypical setting for the Punisher, because he's like all black, and you mostly think of neon and sun when you think of Miami. I know this project has been in the works for a bit for you, but why was it something that you wanted to work on? What made you want to tackle this project?
Well, the very non-sexy answer is
Ed.
Sorry?
Ed.
No, actually, screw Ed. No, well, I have been a fan of Ed's for years, actually. When I was working on 28 Days Later, he was doing his murder book stories on his website, and I really liked them. So I actually emailed him asking if I could do one. He said sure, and then I got work at Marvel, and that was it. I didn't touch it, but then we ended up getting to work to do one of those stories for when Dark Horse was publishing it a few years ago. Mm-hmm. So me and Ed have actually worked together on that short story.
Right.
And it was yeah, I really like it. But no, I was working on Injection, and Warren said he wasn't sure when he would be able to do the next volume. So I reached out to Marvel saying I had a gap in my schedule just to see if there was anything going. If not, fine, because I was thinking I might just work on my own thing. But they offered writing and drawing one thing, which was interesting, but I just felt it would be too much work for the time I had. And then Punisher was mentioned, and I've always wanted to draw Punisher. And Ed was mentioned as well, because I'd mentioned to Ricky Purden at Marvel that I was a fan of Ed's writing. Because, like, not to sound like a dick or anything, but like, there's not that many. After working with Warren, and Warren's been so supportive of me writing my own stuff too. Like I was saying, you can only draw so many pages. I decided if I'm not working with Warren, or I'm not writing for myself, I'm gonna have to be more selective about who I work with. Mm-hmm. But I've always been a fan of Ed's, and it just felt like. And Punisher is a book I know Ed would write the crap out of, so I just thought Ed, me, Punisher, that would just be a really great team. So yeah, so when Marvel suggested Ed, I was like, yeah, let's definitely.
I think that's one of the interesting things about this book is, the Punisher. I don't know why, just kind of makes sense for you. Maybe it's because of like how you ink, or maybe it's because of just like the characters you seemingly are kind of attracted to, more like the street level type characters and everything. But there was a part of me that I was like a little surprised that you hadn't done the Punisher before, because it just makes so much sense for you. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, the frustrating thing is I told a friend of mine, is like, oh, I'm going to do Punisher, and they went, again? It's like, it's like, I haven't done Punisher, and they're like, you did those covers. I'm like, yeah, I did the covers, but like, and I realized that's the downside of doing so many covers, is people assume you've done a thing that you actually haven't done.
You've done a lot of things if that was the case.
That's true, yeah. Yeah. But I well, I mean, actually, I remember when Ed told me the story for Punisher, I was really annoyed, because he said it's going to be in Miami, and I, like I was like, God damn it, because I wanted to draw like moody New York, and like snow, and dark shadows and everything. I'm like, Miami, how am I going to draw shadows in Miami? But I found a way in, though. Like it actually, in so many ways, something that's a limitation became a creative solution.
Right.
But so yeah, Punisher is a character been done by so many creators, and I wanted to do a book that looked like a different Punisher book. Like if you pick it up, I want you to see it's Punisher, but I want you to know that it's a different book.
Mm-hmm.
That's important to me whenever I'm working on something, that it feels like its own thing.
Actually, tying into what you were just saying, is that part of the reason why you wanted your covers to be so different? Because it's like I really love your covers. Like the covers you're doing on this are like the first one is just like basically the silhouette of Frank Castle with like pink behind it, and it's like it has this perfect blending of these two opposing sides. You have the Punisher, a character who like I feel like the number one thing I think of him doing is like peering around a corner, or like looking at somebody from a van, like thinking about how he's going to kill them while in New York. So it's like, this is a guy who's like looming in the shadows. And then you have like literally like the bright pink neon of Miami, like pushing against him, like working as like this negative space against him. Is that part of the reason why you wanted those covers to be the way they are?
Well, as I mentioned, I had done Punisher covers before for Becky Cloonan and Steve Dillon, yeah. And then Matt Horak after Steve passed away. But and there was, I think, 17 covers I did, 17 issues, and I had created rules for those covers, which were: don't show him all, work the skull into the composition, and have a story element in there. Mm-hmm. And everyone seemed to really like them, which was great. Everyone really liked my Punisher covers. Brilliant. And so then I'm doing a Punisher book. I'm like, oh, crap. Well, now what am I going to do? That's the point. I wanted to do something really different for those covers, and then I did it, and now I have to do it again.
Right.
I have to beat myself, effectively, because I thought I was so smart the last time. Because I don't want to just go and just draw like an action shot of Punisher. That's been seen a million times before. It's going to be in the book. I don't want the cover to look like I don't want the cover to look like a splash page. So I figured I needed to do something very, very different. In order because I don't want somebody to pick up an issue of Becky and Steve's Punisher and confuse it with Ed's and mine.
Right.
I felt like it needs to look different. So I just decided, again, don't show Punisher, use the skull, but I want to go with very minimal, the less on the cover, the better, basically. Mm-hmm. Kind of make them look a little bit more like those kind of pulp crime novels. Mm-hmm. And a big part of that was the logo, that kind of brushy Punisher logo on my cover. I did that myself.
Nice.
And it'll be updated because I started work on the book like nearly 2 years ago. So the book wasn't called Punisher versus Barracuda at the time. So I need to update it now with the Barracuda bit. But you know what? I wanted somebody to go into the comic shop, browse, and catch their eye, and with a bold cover,
Right.
and they see Punisher on and go, "Huh, Punisher." Because I feel like so many of those, you know, through all the various Max books and all the different miniseries, you can just kind of gloss over it, you know,
Right.
those types of books. And I wanted someone to go, "What the? Huh, Punisher." That's what I think you need to do. You need to kind of grab people's eyes like that. And if I had just done, you know, like a standard Punisher shooting cover, I felt that that's what have happened, you know. So if you, for the other covers as well, they're compositionally exactly the same as that, but the images change issue to issue. But I'm really happy with them. Like, there's no way you'll confuse my covers on this with the Becky and Steve's run.
Is that something that you always think about? Like, let's say there's like a new Moon Knight book and it's from, I don't know who, but it comes out and they're like, we want you to draw covers for this. But you had, like, you know, one of the things I really loved about your Moon Knight run was the covers. Like, it had a very unique look in the way that you rolled those out. Is that something you would very much specifically push back against and say, I can't do this again, I have to do something completely different for it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people will ask you for something based on something you already did.
Right.
You know, you rarely get asked, "Hey, could you do something completely different?" Because let's face it, you know, if you do superhero stuff, people know will hire you. Get hired for the stuff people see.
Yeah.
The Moon Knight covers, I mean, a lot of that came with Warren having he had an idea of what he was looking for sure. And then it was just kind of getting to that. I don't know if I would have been as ballsy to go the way I went with those had I not had Warren in my corner.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'd say Punisher, those covers I think are as ballsy as the Moon Knight ones.
Totally.
But I feel like, you know, but again, regards the Marvel art book, if you look at all the covers in there, I feel that like there's a time to do a superhero pinup cover. There's a time to do a different type of story cover, and there's a time to do a more designed cover.
Right.
There might be a line of books that are very design based that maybe you want to do something different to stand out. I don't know. I guess it depends on the character. It depends on what's been done before.
Right.
It's a case by case basis, and you mean you're not always right. I'm just trying to think of maybe an example, but I'm coming up dry.
No, I totally get what you're saying though. It's like if you just blend in, it's problematic. But if you stand out like so much, it maybe doesn't.
Yeah, like
totally work. Go ahead.
Like, should I do that on Avengers?
Yeah, that'd be weird. I don't know.
No, like I don't know either, it would depend. Should I do it if they say, hey, could you do new covers? As of right now for Avengers, we want to use something completely different. If I did the same thing on Avengers, where is it in the story? Is it a brand new, you know, run? Is it a new direction? Who's writing it? Who's drawing it? You know, I want the aesthetic to like say. I remember when I did a Deadpool versus Old Man Logan.
Mm-hmm.
Marvel had an idea of what they wanted, and I worked with them, and I knew Mike Henderson was drawing it, and I felt that me and him, you know, my art worked with his art, so it felt cohesive and yet distinctive.
Right.
I think it really depends on, I guess it depends on the book, on the creators. Although it would be interesting to like Avengers and there's like no Avengers on it, just like a head. I say one thing though, you'd notice that Avengers book.
Yeah, you would, and you know what? I that is a very important part about covers that people forget. It's like you were talking about walking around on the stands, and it's sometimes covers just feel kind of homogenous, and it's not just, you know, Marvel or DC or whatever. It's like everybody. It's like you just kind of have generic looking covers, and sometimes you have other publishers aping covers from Marvel or DC history, and you're just like, well, that just looks like something else I've seen before. And for me, it's like a lot of times when I'm walking. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, man, I didn't mean to talk over you. I've told myself like I'm never doing a homage cover.
Yeah.
I'm just not doing it because it's just been done so many times.
Right.
Homages of homages of homages of homages, and like I'm just not doing it.
Yeah.
But you're like that's how I think about it when I go into the comic shop. I glaze my eye over the whole thing, and I try see what catches my eye. Generally, less is more, I would say. But like,
I was going to say that's why Paper Girls is always my go-to example.
there you go. Just the line drawing doesn't necessarily matter. The colors pop,
Mm-hmm.
and then you see the image, and which is the drawing, and it pulls you right in. Now, if every single comic cover looks like that, then it wouldn't work.
Right.
But generally comic book covers are title on top, a multitude of characters in the cover, therefore 16 different colors. So your eye just blends them together. But like the Eric Zawadzki did that cover for his Eternal graphic novel.
Oh yeah,
Boom.
that's so good.
It was all pretty much white with the Viking at the bottom. Brilliant. Like that grabs you right in. But you got to be ballsy to make those decisions. But I think Eric's smart enough to know that like what everything is going to be on the stands is, and it's not to insult everybody else who's doing covers. It's if you're hired to do a job, and you're doing the job within the context of the cover, and you're talking to editors, yada yada yada. You're not often thinking the context of what it's going to be on the shelf next to.
Right. Yeah.
And I try to do that, and I'm sure lots of other people do it too. But you generally, editors and writers and copywriters and stuff, they're not thinking of that. They're thinking, vision's got to be at the top of this image, or all those kind of weird decisions kind of get they muddy up the water a bit.
Yeah. Well, I did want to ask about interiors too, because I find. Okay, I was trying to remember, and unfortunately, I no longer have Comic Book DB as a crutch because that's gone, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Is this the first time you've drawn interiors since Return of Wolverine, or like published interiors since Return of Wolverine?
No, I drew a solitary page in Marvel Comics 1001.
Oh,
so
God.
Screw you, Dave.
Damn it! Comic Book DB, come back!
I was to my friend Stephen Mooney, and I think we were having drinks one time. He was like, "When's the last time you drew a sequential page, you son of a bitch?" But because I've been doing so many. I've been doing covers, and like honestly, working on pitches as well, which like just won't see the light of day for a long time. But well, technically, Punisher I started before Wolverine,
right,
and I finished after. But yeah, it was the last stuff of mine, which is so weird. It was 2-in-1 annual, then 3 issues Return of Wolverine. So I was working on Punisher at the time, but Marvel asked if I could help them out, so I did those 3 issues, which are fun, and then back to Punisher. But to me, this Punisher book feels, because and no offense to anyone on the Wolverine book, but like that was Charles and Steve's book.
Right.
That everyone was there for Steve McNiven, not Dec Shalvey, so that's fine. Whereas Punisher feels like the first proper Marvel book I've done since Moon Knight, because it's the book where I've gotten to, come at it with the visual approach that I had on Moon Knight.
Yeah.
Again, Return of Wolverine was already established.
You're defining.
So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of a weird thing to say, but it's like it's not like you haven't been busy, but does it feel good to be on interiors again and figuring out things on the page and doing what you came up doing, like the thing that a lot of people know you for, which is being an interiors artist? Is that, I don't know, a relief? Relief feels like maybe a little too strong, but is it nice?
No, yeah, I know what you mean. I feel slightly. The last couple of years, I kind of feel like I've been honing my craft more privately. Even though I've been I think I did way more covers last year than any other year before, but I also colored most of them, and that's a craft I've been trying to develop. So, I think I've worked up to a level where I don't need to be getting pages in every single day.
Right.
As long as I can afford to pay the bills. and hone other skills. So like I've been like personally just working on stuff on InDesign and getting my head around coloring on with brushes and Wacom tablets and whatnot. Because I'd previously been coloring with a mouse.
Oh boy.
I think I decided to kind of step back and, get work done to get work done and just kind of upskill myself a little. But the downside of that is there's less sequential work. So I've been tipping away at it over the last couple of years, but it will feel good to have a published comic out for a few months again. It's been weird not having it, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the funny thing is,
it kind of feels. I feel like a fraud sometimes because I've no comics out, but I'm always working.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the interesting thing is I was like, how does this affect you like from a visibility standpoint? And then I was thinking about it, and I imagine from a visibility standpoint, like, is Declan working, the quote unquote for the question. The covers are probably far better at showing that than interiors are, because it's like probably more people see your covers than they do the interiors, which, maybe speaks to the upside down nature of comics, but at the same time, I think it's true.
I think covers are great to keep your visibility like day to day, month to month, week to week, or whatever. I think though, I think covers. I love doing covers. They're great fun. They're a different skill set. They're a different challenge, and it keeps me on my toes as regards storytelling pages too. But I think in the long term, you don't make royalties from covers, and no one's really going to remember down the line. Like I think I did. I think there was 1 month I had like 4 covers out, and I was really happy with them. And there was some list of like best covers of the month, and none of the covers I did were on it. I was really annoyed. I'm like, son of a bit, like, what do I have to do? And I realized it's just a list, it's just a silly list. Why would you get that upset about it? But it just goes to show how short people's memories are.
Right.
That like it's something I've busted my ass on these, like I'm the work I'm seeing is more, like you said, more visible, yet forgotten so fast.
Yeah.
And I think that's why. It's why like I don't just do covers. Like I said, I have been working on Punisher like over the last year or so, couple of years. But I know I personally get really down if I'm not doing sequential pages. Mm-hmm. Like if I don't feel like I'm telling a story, I tend to actually get a little, I don't want to say depressed, but I get kind of just frustrated, I guess.
Sure.
Covers are short-term satisfaction, but stories are long-term satisfaction. If that makes sense.
Does it work the same way when you're writing, or is it like, do you feel that mostly when it comes to sequentials for art?
I don't know. Writing's a weird one.
It's a different part of your brain.
It is, like, because even with the book that's coming out a few months, like that's been. I mean that idea, it comes from even the same time as Savage Town. Like, I don't know. For me, it's just trying to find the time to have the mental to dedicate mental space to writing is tough when I'm trying to tell sequential pages, or I'm trying to draw a cover, or I'm trying to color it. Stuff that actually pays the bills. That tends to just take up most of the space. So trying to find the time to kind of work on writing it's I don't know. I mean, I will say one thing. I was way more productive when I was doing just one thing, like Thunderbolts, where I drew what I must have drawn. I think it was about a book a month.
Mm-hmm.
No way I could do that now. I'd say I can do 8 issues a year now, probably. Like 10 tops. But that's if I had nothing else to do. But now, in the last couple of years, I kind of decided to maybe take a bit more control over what I'm doing and where I'm going, and the amount of administration that needs to be done in order, like that's what's been killing me for the last 2 years. Just trying to find the time to sit down and draw is that has been the hardest.
Yeah. Well, I want to get into Bog Bodies, but before we talk about that, I did want to ask. It's funny because I was reading previous interviews you did, and it seems like there's been a lot of questions about like it seems like you're writing a lot more lately, and to me it seems like that was more a product of opportunity and situation. I'm not saying that you're not interested in writing, but it's like, you're doing Bog Bodies and you have, I'm sure, varying other things in some level of production. But you also like, you have this big gap because Punisher versus Barracuda, you're waiting for that to start up. You have all these different things. So you're doing covers and you're writing. Was jumping into writing so fully, was that a product of opportunity or is that choice?
A little bit of both.
Sure.
The Savage Town was something I'd been wanting to do for a while. Well, say no, not wanting to do. It's an idea I'd had for a long, long time, and then it started to form over, over the years and months and whatnot. And then I decided, I don't think I ever would have done it had I stayed working at Marvel,
Right.
And even we were asking before about the significant changes. One of the best things I ever did at Marvel was leave.
Right.
After Moon Knight, I think they Marvel had asked what did I want to do next, and I just remember thinking I wish they'd asked me this before because I was there 4 years at that stage, and I basically just did what I was asked. Leaving Marvel and doing Injection like empowered me in a way that I couldn't have seen, and I decided to take advantage of that. So doing a create your own book like Injection made me think, well, maybe I could do my own one. Like I couldn't write and draw it because that's just not practical. But so it's a weird mix of like I had the idea and then I had the opportunity, so I jumped on that.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily about me wanting to be a quote unquote writer, but I had a story I wanted to tell. And then I think I happened to get asked about the Deadpool versus Old Man Logan, which I think I was asked to draw it as well, but I kind of just chanced my arm and sent them the graphic novel I was working on. So a lot of it was just serendipitous, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I will say there is I can't say I would be lying if I said I've always wanted to write. It's been my dream. It hasn't. I've always wanted to tell stories, and I realize at a point there's too many stories for me to be able to
draw them all.
There's not enough hours. Exactly. Like even if I had all the stories I ever wanted to do, I would die by the time I'd get to draw half of them. So realistically, I needed to kind of change strategy a bit, and so that's why somebody else drew Savage Town. It's why somebody else is drawing Bog Bodies. It's why I'm drawing Punisher. But it's really just a matter of wanting to tell stories, and I've always been interested in writing. Like it's weird. Like I've been drawing comics for years and listening about writing.
Mm-hmm.
That was been the great thing about drawing is you can kind of inform yourself about so much stuff. I can listen to documentaries or I can listen to creative discussions. So I was educating myself on writing while drawing. But I don't know. I feel like I've kind of been in a weird limbo for the last 2 years, really, because everything's been covers and I haven't had any stories out there really.
Yeah.
So I think, I think I've been in a weird limbo for the last 2 years. So yeah, it's been nice to start the year 2020 with an art book.
Right.
That's been really cool, and it feels good to be following it with like stories that I've drawn and one that I've written in the same month as well. Which worked out weirdly.
Yeah, it feels like largely what you're saying though is like it's not that you were deliberately looking for something. It's like it's almost like the perception of Declan Shalvey, creator, has changed like a little bit. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's like now that you have like some of those things under your belt, it's like, oh, okay, he can do this too. Okay, let's talk to him about that. And I think that's really interesting that it's almost like a perception thing as much as anything. I don't know.
I think definitely so. Like, when I started working with Warren, I knew straight away that I was going to get a level of respect juice off of him. Like I just knew people were and it happens straight away. People are like, oh my God, you work with Warren Ellis? God, and you get this kind of weird afterglow of genius on you, which is completely undeserved because I just like, I'm just standing next to him, you know, but people treat you differently. And I definitely milked the shit out of it, you know?
Yeah.
But, well, like people just started talking to me far more respectfully once it was announced. But then when Moon Knight came out, I mean, I think it raised my, for lack of a better term, art cred way more. I think I was seen more as a quote unquote illustrator rather than comic book artist, you know?
Yeah.
And that's perception. And like, it wasn't deliberately generated by me, but I'll take it, you know? If somebody offered me a cover that Warren was attached to, yeah, I'll do it. I'm more than happy to be I think any artist will know this, you know, like you work your way up in the industry by riding the coattails of writers who are bigger than you.
Sure.
Like I did it with Jeff Parker. I did it with Jerry Duggan. Like that's just how because you can only do so many issues in a year. Writers are generally bigger than you, so that's how you work way up. I just happened to get a very handy leg up with Warren, thankfully. But and then yeah, like perception. I think perception is so much of comics, really, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
You know, like who's hot right now? You know, and you and I can have a debate of who's the hot artist right now and why are they hot? Is it because you always see their work or is it because you barely ever see their work?
Right.
You know, who's hot right now writing wise is because they write every book, or are they going to be hot next year because everybody's sick of reading their stuff? It's very, it's like a weird, you know what, there should be some kind of like career management course for comic creators. And I have been very lucky, but I think I've done a fairly decent job of managing my own career or taking advantage of opportunities that came my way.
Yeah. Well, this is a good example of what you're talking about. And believe me, this is not me defaming him. Arthur Adams is like a perfect example of a person who like people think of as like this, like, oh my God, I love Arthur Adams. He's so incredible. And it's like, if you ever look at like his like interior, like back when, again, this is apparently the episode where I mourn the loss of comic book DB, but if you ever looked at his comic book DB for interiors, it is much shorter than you would realize, like much shorter.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
like, it's funny because whenever he has something that comes out, you're just like, holy crap, this has got to be a big deal. Like when he was doing those War of the Realms covers, I feel like it was intrinsically suggesting that War of the Realms isn't just a big deal because it's War of the Realms. It's a big deal because, oh my God, there's Arthur Adams covers.
Absolutely. Like, I think he's more, well, I mean, with him specifically, I'm sure it's a case of like, well, his work is quite meticulous.
Yes.
I'm sure it takes him a long time. So he's less available. But when you're less available, people want you more.
Yes.
You know?
Supply and demand.
Like I said, absolutely. But like, I know I've been doing so many covers because people see me, I would hope, see me doing good work, and people want to hire somebody doing good work. People will hire you if they, one, see you, and two, like you. So if you, and it would be, advice to anybody, if you want to be hired to do something, be seen doing it.
Yeah.
Be it like writing or drawing or whatever. If you're a horror artist, but you want to do fantasy books, no editor is going to just imagine that you're going to be an amazing fantasy artist. You've got to show them.
Right.
As regards, like, that career stuff, like if people see you doing good superhero covers, they're probably going to hire you to do superhero covers. And I've just been lucky that that's worked my way. But you could also argue is that I'm, flooding the market with too much of my work.
Sure.
I mean, maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I don't know. Those are things that are hard to kind of figure out. Is it smarter to do less, or is it smarter to do more? When is it smarter to do that? How? It's a delicate tightrope.
Well, and if you go too far the other way and it doesn't work out, then you're just not hireable, and then it's like you're screwed in a different way.
There's people who, I know lots of artists who are like, no one's hiring me, and when they go and ask, they're like, oh, I thought you were busy,
right?
Because everyone assumes you're busy. Like, I am absolutely busy, and I've carved. I say no a lot more now, but at the same time, you know, you don't want to just throw work away, but you only have you're only capable of so much as well.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of artists who are capable of so much more, but everyone just assumes that they're too busy.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Bog Bodies. It is your graphic novel that's coming out through Image on April 22nd. It's about an Irish gangster on the run after a job gone wrong. He stumbles upon a young woman lost in the Dublin mountains. Injured and unarmed, this unlikely pair must try to evade their pursuers and survive the desolate bog that has served as a burial ground for unspeakable murder throughout history. It's artist Gavin Fullerton, it's colorist Rebecca Nulty, it's letterer Clayton Cowles, and editor Heather Antos. I told you before, I read it, I loved it, it was fantastic. I really like I was reading it, and like we'll probably get to this, but like there was this moment about 3/4 of the way through where I was like, holy shit. And then like it went from being something I was really enjoying to being like, this is like really damn good.
Oh, thanks, man.
What were the origins of this story? Because I don't know. I mean, like I was talking to Amber about, or my wife Amber, for listeners that don't know, I was talking to her about, your books are very, I'm not saying this like in a diminishing way or something like that, but they're very Irish. They have a very foundational root in your home.
How dare you?
Where did this one come from?
Well, like, I'm very, I'm conscious of, doing more creator-owned stuff and it all being Irish, but I just find those are stories I'd like to tell. I'd like to do other stories too, but these were just the ones at the forefront of my mind.
Sure.
But I actually had the idea around the time I was doing Savage Town. I'm not sure who else I've told this. I actually had it was an idea for a one shot because I had an apprentice, and he was doing really good stuff. So I thought, it would be nice if I wrote a one shot for him, and that would be a nice portfolio for him and an exercise for me to draw to write something else. I live South Dublin, so like more south you go, it gets more countryside, and the Dublin mountains, or you can kind of see them from my apartment. And I think I can't remember what it was. I just remember thinking about how it would suck to get stuck out there at night, because I used to live in the countryside, and like it's it gets dark, really really dark in the countryside, but so it's a mix of that, and I think inspiration as well was the Sopranos episode. What's the title of it? I know it well. I'm drawing a blank. It's embarrassing.
It's okay. It's okay. What was?
No, it's not. It's not okay. Anybody who knows The Sopranos is going to be yelling at me right now. It's one where Chris and Paulie get stuck out in the Pine Barrens. That's it, Pine Barrens. It was like that was kind of an inspiration as well. But then when I think I talked to somebody at DC about doing it as a one shot, and then they suggested doing it as a graphic novel. I was like, all right, that sounds cool. And then we announced Savage Town, and then they said no. Because we were basically they thought it was too similar, so we're not going to do that if you're doing that at Image. So it's like, right, fine, so okay. So kind of put the idea in the back of my mind. I was working on Savage Town, and went full forward with that. But then afterwards, I thought, like, I think there's something here. Like, I'm just gonna, especially with having done everything at Image with Savage Town, I'm like, well, I can just do this myself. And but the apprentice had gone on to do other stuff in the meantime. He's kicking ass. But I'd met Gavin Fullerton because I was doing a storytelling class in Dublin, and he was at it. And basically, I would just take comic book scripts, and I would get the class to do layouts, and then I would show them what I would do, or we'd compare layouts from each other and basically kind of workshop what the best way to tell the story is. And he was super quiet every single class until the very last class, where he was like, "Oh, I just wanted to show you some of these comics I'd done," and he had like all these different self-published stuff, like in various styles, and it was amazing. The stuff was incredible. I was just like, why are you only showing me this now? Jesus Christ. Um, but yeah, Gavin, he's been working illustration for years and just doing his own stuff. But I thought he was phenomenal. And then so I ran it by him, and he seemed really into it. So we talked about it some more and kind of figured out more themes with it. And yeah, just worked at the pitch. I sent it to Eric, and I took a while, but he said yeah, and we just got it made.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, so I'm going to do a very horrible thing. When we talked about Savage Town before, I unfortunately compared it to Martin McDonagh because I love his stuff. But I mean, it's not unfortunate because Martin McDonagh is amazing. But at the same time, like this one, here's the twist part. Like when I first was reading it, I was like, this really reminds me of In Bruges in the sense of like there's like the younger guy who may have made a mistake on his job as a gangster, and like there's like a kind of a sort of advocate for him that's like supposed to do something like to take care of him. You know, I'm trying to avoid spoilers to a certain degree, but it's like, but I mean, there was
I've noticed it's actually very hard to talk about because it gets very spoilery very early.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing about it is like, and that's the thing that makes it really interesting is like, believe me, if you just made like an In Bruges comic, I would be like, yes, because I love In Bruges. But at the same time,
same here.
It flips at one point and becomes something different, and that makes it. I don't know. I mean, it's really fascinating when that flip comes, and you're just like, this is not what I expected. I don't even really have a question for you here, Declan. I'm just like, I really appreciate that flip because it's like. I don't know. I always think it kind of ties into what we were talking about with covers. It's like a big part of the success of any storytelling medium is both meeting and rejecting expectations and finding something more interesting than what you think you're going to get. When you get something like that, I find that that's where the most interesting stories come from.
Yeah, no, I get you. It's well, like say after Savage Town. I mean, that was for me a way of getting out a lot of stuff I'd been thinking of. And I think having gotten them all basically exorcised those demons with Savage Town, it'll let me kind of take a step back and tell, a more nuanced story.
Yeah.
Like Savage Town was a sprawling city, like multiple characters and different like plot lines and whatnot. This one is way more restrained. It's 4 characters, one location. Again, like I said, it was being stuck in the. I was trying to think of like an isolate location, and of course, like Ireland really works for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to think of like Dublin gangsters being. Well, I guess. Well, see, it touches on some kind of real world stuff. Like it would be well known that a lot of people have gone missing up in the Dublin Mountains because it's not too far from Dublin, and there's there are gangsters here,
mm-hmm.
and I'm sure there's stories of the IRA burying guns and other gangs. Like all this stuff's been going on for years. So there's a kind of a grim history. Attached to it too. So I wanted to tell kind of a more moody, a kind of a more, not something that was as kind of eccentric as Savage Town was, say, something that was way more kind of like it's not a sequel to Savage Town or anything, but it's definitely kind of steeped in the same influences.
Sure.
You trying to take an Irish crime story and apply it to something else, and there's lots of stuff I kind of see. Again, I'm not trying to spoil anything,
yeah, it's like you're trying to dodge around it. I know it's tough. It's that's the I think that's kind of where the magic of the book lies to a certain degree. Is like it's such a surprising narrative that by talking about it, like I don't know, I'm not one who really is bugged by spoilers. But because like that moment when you realize what's happening is so crucial to the success of the narrative, it's like you kind of want to dodge it completely.
Yeah, I'll say that I'll talk about this, so I won't say anything plot wise beyond like the less you know, the better. But there's definitely elements as regards uh, there's themes there to do with the Catholic Church.
Hmm.
Like there's I don't know, but a lot of people outside of Ireland would know this, but have you ever heard of the Magdalene laundries?
Mm-mm.
Magdalene laundries basically were these laundries run by nuns, and basically, if it was like 1950s Ireland, um, if you were a woman who had a child out of wedlock,
Hmm.
your family would send you there,
Oh,
because yeah,
okay.
so you wouldn't, the family would want to basically would be shamed, what would the neighbors say, or the priest say? So basically, that woman would be, or girl, basically, a lot of them would always be girl, very young women would be sent off to these Magdalene laundries. They'd have their kids, and their kids would be taken away from them. A lot of cases, they were sent off to America, like they were bought by American families. Um, like this was all done by the Catholic Church. There have been like mass graves of babies found.
Wow.
In the last few years here, there was one found in Mayo there like 2 or 3 years ago.
Hmm.
Like a lot of really like messed up stuff. And thematically, worked like literally the idea of burying secrets.
Hmm.
Um, is something that I kind of wanted to weave into the story. And so on a plot level, the book is fairly thin, like it is very basic. But I wanted in a kind of in a similar way where I wanted Savage Town to be about kind of like the Irish economy. I wanted Bog Bodies to be saying like something more about like the the influence of the church. And the nice thing is I, like the quote unquote gang. Like you can use that kind of that I think it was an interview with Ed Brubaker one time where I think he really said like crime stories or just stories about, you can use them about anything, you can tell them about anything. So that really kind of opened up a lot more for what I could kind of talk about. And so yeah, so for there's and it's also been a problem with like wanting to promote the book as well, is because it's tied to such very raw nerves. Not in a very obvious way. Like I don't know if you've read the book, and like you said, you didn't know any of that. But if you, it's not like a signposted there. I don't know if you notice any of the kind of nods towards the church in the book at all when you read it. Did you?
I mean, maybe not.
No, it's perfectly fine if you didn't. Like it's not. Yeah, no. It's fine. Like but it's there.
Yeah.
If you read it again, I wonder if you'll notice it now.
Yeah.
But it's something like I wanted to make sure was there. I guess. Sorry if I'm babbling all the place, but I guess I wanted to tell a more nuanced story, and as well something a bit about empathy.
Yeah. Totally.
Forgiveness. It's something I think we could do a lot more stories about that now. But again, without getting into too much plot stuff, but I kind of wanted to. I wanted to test the reader's level of empathy effectively.
Yeah, I mean that was the thing that really got me was Killian, the main character. I mean, just like reading his journey, like from like an idiot in his apartment playing video games in the beginning to somebody who's really confronting the emotions of what he's gone through in his life, and that makes it a really like fascinating, and like honestly, like it makes it a much more universal read in some ways, because it's like I have never been an Irish gangster lost in the wood or lost in like the mountains, but I mean, who hasn't had an experience where something forces them to realize that the costs of the actions that they've taken on, and it makes it a much more like rewarding read because of it. But I do want to ask about like just a couple more questions. I want to ask about what you learned from Savage Town that you carried into this, because I mean, obviously Savage Town was your first graphic novel. Do you feel that like you learned a lot over that experience in both how to approach it as a storyteller, but also in getting it out there to the world?
Yeah, I mean, you could say the worst thing to do after Savage Town would be do another Irish crime story. Like, hey, that thing you did, why don't you do it again? Like it's like Savage Town did well, but it wasn't a huge success or anything. But like I said, it's another story I wanted to tell. But I would say well, in a weird way, it's a total 160. Like Savage Town was written in a way that it could continue if it was really successful. It was successful enough to be a single graphic novel, so that's what it is now. Whereas Bog Bodies was very much a done in one, like it was a very self-contained story. I felt, well, one, I was happy to tell a self-contained story, but I also wanted to take a step back. Like I said, Savage Town was jam packed. I felt there was a lot in there.
Yeah.
And I wanted to take a couple of steps back with Bog Bodies, and I wanted, as they say, I wanted the location to be a character, but very much so like the compositions and the I wanted to be really, really isolate. I think Gavin did an amazing job with there's one of the first pages. There's a shot that's mainly sky and just like a bit of a hill, and just the lights of the car, I just are perfect. And how he works with. Sorry, I'm going on about Gavin now.
No, you should. Gavin's a revelation. He does an amazing job in the book.
Yeah, no, he does. But so as regards specifically to your question, I figured if I could tell a shorter story that was more self-contained, I felt it was a good experiment to try out. I guess from a salesman point of view, I figured should try and change the material a little. Savage Town was a $17, I think it was like 130-page graphic novel, whereas this is a $12.99 96-page graphic novel. So it's less pages. So I was trying to figure out, could I tell a story with less page count so I could price it cheaper? Because there's one thing I got feedback a lot from. Well, actually not feedback. I got numbers back when I was looking at Savage Town. I saw that a lot of retailers just ordered one copy, and I can't really blame them. It was a graphic novel by an unproven writer and an unknown artist. So I figured, why not do the cover myself, since I'm more known for doing covers, price it lower, but I can't do it for this. It has to be a shorter story. So there was some kind of economic decisions in there. But because it's creator owned, I felt like I could kind of take that chance. I don't know how that book is going to sell now. Will it sell better or worse than Savage Town? I don't know, but Savage Town was a huge, huge learning experience because I thought I knew what I was doing because of Injection.
Right.
But Savage Town was a graphic novel. It was not single issues, and I didn't realize just how different that whole thing is. I mean, didn't need to worry too much about Injection because it was a Warren Ellis book. It was going to make money. Savage Town, I didn't realize how much the book market really, how much the book would live or die by the direct market or the book market. And I guess I'm with Bog Bodies. I'm trying to learn the sales lessons from that.
Yeah.
But on the downside, and also things I didn't realize, Savage Town, we got that book done in time for print, which is how a lot of comics get done, basically. But what I didn't realize is for the book market, they generally like to see the entire thing beforehand. So, which was a huge lesson. I didn't know that at all. So a lot of people would be looking to see Savage Town. They'd see the first 30 pages, which is fine. And I thought that's all they'd need to see, but it's not the case where they actually need to see the whole book. So that's why Bog Bodies is all totally finished and done. And that's a lesson I learned from that. So it's a lot of technical, boring stuff that I didn't know, I feel has informed me. And I think I'm doing a better job with Bog Bodies. It's a little harder to sell because, like I said, we're tiptoeing around the story. And it deals with sensitive subject matter, so I can't be as kind of I can't have the same sense of humor as I did with Savage Town. because I used to take the piss out of myself a lot with it too, like because it was so Irish and it could play up to the Irishness of it. Bog Bodies, I feel like there's like it's actually, I hope you'd think it's actually pretty funny.
It is, yeah.
But I certainly don't want to be leaning into it with it's a bucket of laughs, because that's not where you should be coming at it from,
Yeah. No, and I think that all these are important lessons. And I like the idea of a lower priced, done in one story that makes it a little bit more accessible to people. It's like, I remember Eric Stevenson using, I did an interview with him towards the end of last year where I was talking with him, about a wide variety of subjects. And one of the things that he pointed out is a great book for accessibility reasons. And I can't believe we keep bringing up Warren Ellis over and over, but Fell was $1.99. It was complete stories. I think it was even slightly oversized. And because of that, it made it so accessible and it made it really easy to just jump in and read. And I think that, another thing that your buddies over at Big Bang have touted recently is Marvel doing these digest sized young reader books that are $12.99. They're like graphic novels that are digest sized, like manga sized. And they have like 8 issues in them. And the bang for the buck in there, you hate to talk about things like that, bang for the buck when it comes to art. But at the same time, a lot of people are making decisions based off of those things. I feel like you've lowered the barrier to entry by doing a one and done story at that price point. And that, that's important. That's important because ultimately I imagine you want people to read your books.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like I remember with Savage Town, I was advised to price it the way I did, and I was like, okay, I mean, I don't think $17 is crazy amount of money for a graphic novel, but
sure.
If I'm going to put my head in the mind of a retailer, I don't know this. I know this guy is an artist, not a writer, and I don't know this artist, so I can take a chance on a book. Like I looked at a lot of the sales info, and I saw there was some stores ordered lots, and that was great. There was like 100 stores ordered one copy.
Yeah.
Now, like, okay, great, they ordered a copy. Once that copy's gone, that was it, And I remember being like, oh, for fuck's sake. But like that, any more than one copy is probably a huge risk for that retailer. So that was it half in my mind when I had the story was like, is there a way I can offer something a bit more affordable that's less risky? And hopefully I would hope that like after Savage Town, it would be less risky. And also me doing the cover will be less risky. And Gavin, as it turns out, has a graphic novel at Boom, the Bags, with Patrick McHale. He adapted a short story for Boom. So Gavin's not, and he's doing covers for IDW as well. So he's not a total unknown. So I kind of feel it's a little bit. I feel like it might be more attractive from that point of view. But it's an experiment. Savage Town was a huge experiment. It was, like I said, it was so much everything I wanted. I credited Phil first because I wanted, to put such a spotlight on him. I wanted to take every single chance I could on that book. Mm-hmm. But I'm glad I did it. It's a huge, creatively satisfying, rewarding experience for me, and it made enough money to justify itself. Had I priced it lower, I don't think it would have.
Yeah.
And so I think it was good advice I got at the time. If I could have priced it lower to try to be more competitive, but I don't think then I think we would have been in trouble.
Yeah.
So like you said, you don't want to necessarily have like money reasons to justify art, but I mean, art, this stuff isn't free, and I don't want to undersell the work, but I also want, like you said, I want people to read the book. So as attractive as I can, as much as I can make it appealing for people to pick it up, or like, down to I designed the book myself this time as well, trying to have as much control over the presentation of it as possible. And again, I don't know how this will go. Maybe it'll go worse. Maybe it'll go better. Maybe it'll go the same. But what I think is it's exciting and stressful is to try these things out and see what happens, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is. I mean, we're living in a market right now where shops. I talked to a number of shops who didn't order a whole lot of Wonder Woman number 750 because it was $9.99, and like that's Wonder Woman, and it's like, you know, one of the biggest properties in the world, and so it's like, you know, you have to. People are trying to figure things out now, and I you know, I'm not like the person who decides these things, but I think it was a good decision. So good job by you, Dec.
Well, even I remember when we first got numbers for Savage Town from the direct market, the numbers were what they were, and then I saw the others in the book market. I was like, ha, fuck the direct market, ka-ching. You know, then cut to 2 years later, and I understood what book returns were.
Yes,
and I was like, oh, thank God for the direct market. So like, you know, I will say that's another lesson I learned is, and I mean, I may be failing, but like I'm trying to make Bog Bodies more appealing to the book market too, because I think I did a good job with retailers for Savage Town, but like, you know, Savage Town is a book that I wanted like my friend's dad to read, and it's a problem that I think he would read it and he'd like it, but he's never going to find out about it. That's a problem I'm going to try with Bog Bodies, like closer to actually when it comes out in Ireland at least, is trying to let people know about it. You know, maybe people who wouldn't read a comic. I think it didn't kick off with Savage Town the way I was hoping it would, but it was still worth the experiment. But I think there is an audience here, who don't read Marvel, or they wouldn't read a superhero comic. But if you put a crime story in front of them, they would read that because they would watch that film and they would read that book. They would go to that play, but they're completely unaware of graphic novels. And I think there's a space there where the audience who'll consume that type of material they're just not used to that medium, you know. So I'm going to try a bit harder with Bog Bodies, but it probably might be a bit more accessible too, to be fair. Because it's less. I mean, you've read like Savage Town was very deep on specific dialect, whereas Bog Bodies. I mean, I'm not saying I dumbed it down just for the thickos, but because it's set in Dublin specifically, and I just kind of softened it a little bit just because again because of the tone of the story, like, you know. But I feel like it's more accessible. Plus, also because it's thematically, so it's got a lot of similarities. If you liked Bog Bodies, you can go read Savage Town. I like the idea of, you know, these books can kind of maybe help each other. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you got the hard part down right. Bog Bodies is a great book. Coming April 22nd. I'm looking forward to people reading it. You should. If you want to see Declan at Comics Pro, retailers, go say hi. But Declan, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about Bog Bodies, you know, Punisher versus Barracuda and everything else. I appreciate you taking the time. Oh, my pleasure, man. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with writer-artist Declan Shalvey. You can find him on Twitter at Declan Shalvey and his work in the upcoming Bog Bodies at Image Comics and the Punisher vs. Barracuda at Marvel Comics. As a heads up, Off Panel is once again brought to you by Sketch.com. Check out the new version of the site and consider subscribing for access to all the site's content and its members-only forum. If you're a fan of Off Panel, make sure to check it out on Patreon. If you back the show on there, you not only support it, but you get early access to each week's podcast, access to weekly content, and more. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Off Panel on iTunes or Spotify and give the show a rating and review while you're at it. You can find Off Panel and Sketched on social media by liking it on Facebook at /Sketched, that's SKTCHD, follow it on Twitter at @SketchComic, or following me at @SliceFriedGold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Kim Eslin, Philip Mara, Christian Sheldon, Kenny Porter, Chris Pachalo, Torin Grunbeck, Fuzz Bubbles, Christopher Todd, Transmitter Down, Harry Sayer, Waltz Comics and Books, Carl Mazel, Danny Ollie, Paul Slates, Litwin Studios, Akil Wilson, Nathan House, Alex Dimitriopoulos, Terry Dodson, Troy Jeffrey Allen, Liana Kingus, Keegan Ray, Milton Lawson, Wesley Giff, Sean Kirkham, Harry Small, Alistair Ross, Julio Alta, Brett A. Schmidt, Jason Goodmanson, Paul Reinwand, Connor Farnar, Vita Ayala, Aditya Bidikar, Tara Ferguson, Dave Slusher, WMQ Comics, Akil Kokachi, Phil White, Sean Pinella, Kent Heidelman, Philip Seavey, Al Ewing, Ryan Alcock, Nick Michelin, David Kelly, Rob Wilson IV, Nick Polito, Owen McCready, Brendan Fletcher, Gary Maloney, Jonathan Nilsson, Matthew Groom, Jason Massey, Adam Bogert, Xavier Files, Matthew Taylor, Tyler Turner, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Ira James Udaskin, Modern Magic Stories, Nick Hall, Bjorn Basin, John Hendricks, Steve Aronson, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Shipper, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Greg Rucka, Adam Highfield, Fiona Staples, Chris Hallren, Mark Abnett, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim Demonakos, Norbert Nicolo, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks to Upright T-Rex Music, who wrote and performed Panel's theme song just for the show. Check out their music on Spotify because it's completely delightful. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.